Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another Read With Me session. I'm yours truly, Isabel Bedell, and I'm here to read with you Chapter 5 of The Good to Great, amazing book here by Jim Collins. Such an amazing, amazing book. Such an amazing foundational book to have, especially if you're a business owner, if you are currently looking to scale things out for the new year that's coming up, especially if you have had a lot of, I wouldn't call it issues or I wouldn't call it problems, but if you've had difficulties in growing your business to the next level because you might be the only one working in your business right now, this book gives you foundational insight on why that's currently happening and on how that can actually be fixed. So I'm super excited about it because it's totally in alignment with what we've been able to see in the past 5 years of us having our other company. And it's such a great understanding of where we were and where we are and where we're going and what needs to happen in between and how it all can actually become even more effective and efficient if you follow the exact blueprint that is being shared here. And this particular book is all about making sure that you understand the fundamentals of great companies and not following the same trajectory of the good companies, because the main difference between the good to great companies is that they were able to have these two things in very much congruent fundamentals within each step of the growth. Okay, and it's the who and it's the what. We're still in the who, and what we're breaking through here, and I'm really excited here, is if you notice this line, and then there goes a breakthrough. We've just hit the mark where we're actually going to go into the breakthrough, where it happens, how it happens, and it's all about disciplined thoughts. If you can create disciplined people and then create a congruent, disciplined thought throughout the organization, then that breakthrough happens because now you're being able to develop this disciplined action, which will obviously take you to the next level. And when you have momentum, which is what they talk about here as well, when you have all those three parts, people, thoughts, actions, once they're all congruent with one another, momentum steps into play and there's no stopping you, right? So let's get into it. This is called chapter 5. It's the hedgehog concept, simplicity within the three circles. Simplicity within the three circles. Okay, let's get into it. Know thyself, Plato. Clever, isn't he? Know thyself. Are you a hedgehog or a fox? In his famous essay, The Hedgehog and the Fox, Asai Berlin divided the world into hedgehogs and foxes, based upon an ancient Greek parable. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. The fox is a cunning creature able to devise a myriad of complex strategies for sneak attacks upon the hedgehog, and day in and day out, the fox circles around the hedgehog's den, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. Fast, sleek, beautiful, fleet of foot, and crafty, the fox looks like the sure winner. The hedgehog, on the other hand, is a dowdier creature, looking like a genetic mix-up between a porcupine and a small armadillo. He waddles along, going about his simple day, searching for lunch and taking care of his home. The fox awaits in cunning silence at the juncture of the trail. The hedgehog, minding his own business, wanders right into the path of the fox. Ah, I've got you now, thinks the fox. He leaps out, bounding across the ground lightning fast. The little hedgehog, sensing danger, looks up and thinks, Here we go again. Will he ever learn? Rolling up into a perfect little bog, the hedgehog becomes a sphere of sharp spikes, pointing out upward in all directions. The fox, bounding towards its prey, sees the hedgehog's defense and calls off the attack. Retreating back to the forest, the fox begins to calculate a new line of attack, and each day, some version of this battle between the hedgehog and the fox takes place. And despite the greater cunning of the fox, the hedgehog always wins. Berlin extrapolated from this little parable to divide people into two basic groups, foxes and hedgehogs. Foxes pursue many ends at the same time and see the world in all of its complexity. They are scattered or diffused, moving on many levels, never integrating their thinking into one overall concept or unifying vision. Hedgehogs, on the other hand, simplify a complex world into a single organizing idea, a basic principle or concept that unifies and guides everything. It doesn't matter how complex the world, a hedgehog reduces all challenges and dilemmas to simple, indeed almost simplistic, hedgehog ideas. For a hedgehog, anything that does not somehow relate to the hedgehog idea holds no relevance. Princeton professor Marvin Bressler pointed out that the power of the hedgehog during one of our long conversations. You want to know what separates those who make the biggest impact from all those who are just as smart? They are hedgehogs. Freud and unconscious. Darwin in natural selection. Marx and Clark and class struggle. Einstein in relativity. Adam Smith in division of labor. They were all hedgehogs. They took a complex world and simplified it. Those who leave the biggest footprints, said Bressler, have thousands calling after them. Good idea, but you went too far. To be clear, hedgehogs are not stupid, quite the contrary. They understand that the essence of profound insight is simplicity. What could be more simple than E equals my MC squared? What could be simpler than the idea of unconscious organized into an ID ego or superego? What would be more elegant than Adam Smith's pin factory, an invisible hand? No, the hedgehogs are simpletons. They are piercing insight that allows them to see through complexity and discern underlying patterns. Hedgehogs see the essential. They see what is essential and ignore the rest. What does all of this talk about hedgehogs and foxes have to do with being good to great? Well, everything. Those who built the good to great companies to one degree or another are hedgehogs. They used their hedgehog nature to drive towards what we came to call a hedgehog concept. And for their companies, those who led the comparison companies tended to be foxes, never gaining the clarified advantage of the hedgehog concept, being instead scattered, diffused, and inconsistent. Scattered, diffused, and inconsistent. That is what a fox could be. A hedgehog is to the point, direct, intentional, simplistic. Consider the case of Walgreens versus Eckerd. Recall how Walgreens generated cumulative stock returns from the end of 1975 to 2000 that exceeded the market by over 15 times and handily beating such great companies such as GE, Merck, Coca-Cola, and Intel. It was a remarkable performance for such an anonymous, some might even say boring, company. When interviewing Cork Walgreen, I kept asking him to go deeper to help us understand these extraordinary results. And finally, in exasperation, he said, look, it just wasn't that complicated. Once we understood the concept, we just moved straight ahead. Once you know what's working, once you know what's going to work, once you understand what it is that you want to share, just keep sticking to it. The more that you change it, the less results you're going to have. What was the concept? Simply this: the best, most convenient drugstores with high profit per customer visit. The best, most convenient drugstores with high profit per customer visit. And that's it. That's the breakthrough strategy that Walgreens used to beat Intel, GE, Coca-Cola, and Merck. In classic Hedgehog style, Walgreens took this simple concept and implemented it with fanatical consistency. Fanatical consistency. It embarked on a systematic program to replace all inconvenient locations with more convenient ones, preferably corner lots where customers could easily enter and exit from multiple directions. And if a great corner location would open up just a half block away from a profitable Walgreens store in a good location, the company would close the good store, even at a cost of $1 million to get out of the lease to open a great new store right around the corner. Walgreens pioneered through the drive-through pharmacies, found customers that liked the idea, and built hundreds of them. In urban areas, the company clustered its stores tightly together and on the precept that no one should have to walk more than a few blocks to reach a Walgreens. That's strong. That's kind of like how Starbucks is now. You literally go to any place, and you can't go past 2 to 3 miles and not see a Starbucks, or even the hottest or the coolest locations, the hottest locations, the best locations. That is where the Starbucks is. And sometimes there's even 3 Starbucks in one location. Yeah, Walgreens too. Walgreens pioneered. And in downtown San Francisco, for example, Walgreens clustered 9 stores within a 1-mile radius. 9 stores. And if you look closely, you will see Walgreens stores that are densely packed in some cities as Starbucks shops in Seattle. Dang! There you go. Walgreens then linked its convenience concept to a simple economic idea: profit per customer visit. Tight clustering, 9 stores per mile, leads to local economies of scale, which provides the cash for more clustering, which in turn draws more customers. And by adding high margin services like a 1-hour photo developing, Walgreens increased its profit per customer visit. More convenience led to more customer visits, which when multiplied times increased profit per customer visit. Threw cash back into the system to even build even more convenience stores, and store by store, block by block, city by city, region by region, Walgreens became more and more of a hedgehog with this incredibly simple idea. And then look at this graph. How beautiful. It's literally almost like a 90-degree angle. Like, look at this. Crazy, crazy. In a world overrun by management faddists, brilliant visionaries, ranting futurists, fear-mongers, motivational gurus, and all the rest, it's refreshing to see a company succeed so brilliantly by taking one simple concept and just doing it with excellence and imagination. It's refreshing to see a company succeed so brilliantly by taking one simple concept and just doing it with excellence and imagination, becoming the best in the world at convenient drugstores, steadily increasing profits per customer visit. And what could be more obvious and straightforward? Yet, if it was so obvious and straightforward, why didn't Eckerd see it? Well, Walgreens stuck only to cities where it could implement the convenience clustering concept. We found no evidence of a similar coherent concept for growth at Eckerd. Deal makers to the core, Eckerd's executive compulsively leaped at opportunities to acquire clumps of stores, 42 units here, 36 units there, in hedgepodge fashion with no obvious unifying theme. While Walgreens executives understood the profitable growth would come by pushing away all that did not fit with the hedgehog concept, Eckerd executives lurched after growth for growth's sake. In the early 1980s, just as Walgreens became religious about carrying out its convenient drugstore, Eckerd threw itself into the home video market with its purchase of American Home Video Corporation. Eckerd's CEO told Forbes magazine in 1981, "Some feel the purer we are, the better it will be. But I want growth, and the home video industry is only emerging, unlike, say, drugstore chains." And Eckerd's home video foray produced $31 million in losses before Eckerd sold it to Tandy, which then crowned that it got the deal for $72 million below book value. In the precise year of Eckerd's American Home Video acquisition, Walgreens and Eckerd had virtually identical revenues, $1.7 billion. 10 years later, Walgreens had grown to over twice the revenues of Eckerd, accumulating net profits of $1 billion greater than Eckerd over the decade. And 20 years later, Walgreens was going strong as one of the most sustained transformations in our study. Meanwhile, Eckerd ceased to exist as an independent company. Again, let's just read this line. Refreshing to see a company succeed so brilliantly by taking one simple concept and just doing it with excellence and imagination. The three circles. The notion of a hedgehog concept originated in our research team meetings when we were trying to make sense of Walgreens' spectacular returns. Aren't we just talking about strategy, I asked? Convenience drugstores, profit per customer visit, isn't that just basic strategy? What's so interesting about that? But Eckerd also had strategy, said Jenny Cooper, who analyzed all the contrast between the two companies. We can't just say that it's just about having strategy. They both had strategy. Jenny was correct about her observation here. Strategy per se did not distinguish the good to great companies from the comparison companies. Both sets of companies had strategic plans, and there is absolutely no evidence that the good to great companies invested more time and energy into strategy development and long-range planning. Okay, so what are we talking about? Good strategy versus bad strategy? Well, actually, the team sat there for a minute thinking. Then Leigh Wilbanks observes, but what I found so striking is their incredible simplicity. I mean, look at Kroger with the superstore concept, or Kimberly-Clark with the move to paper-based consumer products, or Walgreens with the convenient drugstores. These were simple ideas. Simple scales, people. Simple scales. The research team members all jumped into fray, bantering about the company they were studying. It soon became abundantly clear that all good to great companies attained a very simple concept that they use as a frame of reference for all their decisions, and this understanding coincided with breakthrough results. Meanwhile, the comparison companies like Eckerd got all tipped up by their snazzy strategies for growth. Okay, I pushed back. What is this? What is simplicity enough? Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's right. The world is filled with failed companies that had simple but wrong ideas. Then we decided to undertake a systematic look at the concept that guided the good to great companies in contrast to the comparison companies. And after a few months of sifting and sorting, considering possibilities and tossing them out, we finally came to see that the hedgehog concept in each of the good to great companies wasn't just any random simple idea. The essential strategic difference between the good to great and comparison companies lay in two fundamental distinctions. First, the good to great companies founded their strategies on deep understanding along three key dimensions, what we came to call the three circles. Second, the good to great companies translated that understanding into a simple crystalline concept, that guided all their efforts. Okay, nice. Okay, so let's get into the three circles. More precisely, hedgehog concept is a simple crystalline concept that flows from deep understanding about the intersection of the following three circles. These are the three circles. If you can systemize this, if you can simplify this, and then you can do it over and over and over, this is what the hedgehog concept is. Number one, what you can be the best in the world at. What you can be the best in the world at. Equally important, what you cannot be the best at in the world at. Okay, getting clear on this. This discerning standard goes far beyond core competence. Just because you possess a core competence doesn't necessarily mean that you can be the best in the world at it. Conversely, what you can be the best at might not even be something in which you are currently engaged at. What drives your economic engine? Number two. All the good to great companies attained piercing insight into how the most effectively generated, sustained, and robust cash flow profitability can be. In particular, they discovered the single denominator, profit per X, that had the greatest impact on their economics. It would be cash flow per X in the social sector. And then number three, what are you deeply passionate about? The good to great companies focused on those activities that ignited their passion. The idea here is not to stimulate passion, but to discover what makes you passionate. So the three circles are, number one, what are you passionate about? Okay, and this was actually in order, so I'm going to go into order, okay? Number one is, what can you be the best at in the world while understanding what you're not good at? Number two is, what drives your economic engine? How is your offers? How is your product? How is the whole entire system set up? And then, what are you passionate about? The who, what, why. Who, what, why circle, you know? The three circles of a hedgehog concept. To quickly grasp the three circles, consider the following personal analogy. Suppose that you were able to construct a work life that meets the following three tests. First, you are doing the work for which you have a genetic or God-given talent, and perhaps you could become one of the best in the world at applying that talent. And I feel that I was just born to be doing this. Second, you are paid very well to do what you do. In other words, I get paid to do this, and am I dreaming? Third, you are doing work that you're passionate about and absolutely love to do while enjoying the actual process for its own sake. It's kind of saying things like, I look forward to getting up and throwing myself into my daily work, and I really believe in what I'm doing. And if you could drive towards the intersection of what these three circles translate into a simple crystalline concept that guides you in your life choices, then you have a hedgehog concept for yourself. To have a fully developed hedgehog concept, you need all three circles. And if you make a lot of money doing things at which you could never be the best, you'll only build a successful company, not a great one. If you become the best at something, you never remain on top if you don't have intrinsic passion for what you're doing. And finally, you can be passionate all you want, but if you can't be the best at it, or it doesn't make economic sense, then you might have a lot of fun, but you won't produce great results. Oof. Right here. That's the truth right there. Understanding what you can and you cannot be the best at. They stick with what they understand and let their abilities, not their egos, determine what they will attempt. Warren Buffett wrote this about his $290 million investment in Wells Fargo, despite his serious reservations about the banking industry. Prior to clarifying its hedgehog concept, Wells Fargo had tried to be a global bank operating like a mini Citicorp, and a mediocre one at that. Then, at first, under Dick Cooley, and then under Carl Reichen. Wells Fargo executives began to ask themselves a piercing set of questions. What can we potentially do better than any company? And equally important, what we cannot do better than any company. And if we can't be the best at it, then why are we doing it at all? Putting aside their egos, the Wells Fargo team pulled the plug on the vast majority of its international operations, accepting the truth that it could not be better than Citicorp in global banking. Wells Fargo then turned its attention to what it could be the best in the world at, running a bank like a business with a focus of the Western United States. That's it. That was the essence of the hedgehog concept that turned Wells Fargo from mediocre to Citicorp wannabe to one of the best performing banks in the world. Carl, CEO of Wells Fargo, at the time of the transition, stands as a consummate hedgehog, while his counterparts at Bank of America went into a revolution panic mode in response to deregulation, hiring change gurus who used sophisticated models and time-consuming encounter groups. Reichert stripped everything down to its essential simplicity. It's not space science stuff, he told us in an interview. What we did was so simple, and we kept it simple. It was so straightforward and so obvious that it sounded almost ridiculous to talk about. The average businessman coming from a highly competitive industry with no regulations would have jumped on this like a goose on a June bug. Richard kept people relentlessly focused on the simple hedgehog idea, continuously reminding them that there was no money to be made in Modesto than Tokyo. Those who worked with Reichert marveled at his genius for simplicity. If Carl were an Olympic diver, said one of his colleagues, he would not do a 5-flip twisting thing. He would do the best swan dive in the world and do it perfectly over and over again. The Wells Fargo focus on hedgehog concept was so intense that it became, in its executives' own words, a mantra. Throughout our interviews, Wells Fargo people echoed the same basic theme. It wasn't that complicated. We just took a hard-nosed look at what we were doing and decided to focus entirely on those few things. We knew we could do better than anyone else, not getting distracted into the arenas that would feed our egos and at which we could not be the best. This brings me to one of the most crucial points of this chapter. A hedgehog concept is not a goalpost to be the best, a strategy to be the best. It's an intention to be the best, a plan to be the best. It's an understanding of what you can be the best at. The distinction is absolutely crucial. Now let's read that one more time. This is the most crucial part about this chapter, okay? Having the hedgehog concept, it's not a goal to be the best. It's not a strategy. It's not an intention. It's not a plan, okay? It's an understanding of what you can be the best at. And once you have that clear understanding of what you can be the best at, that is what makes it the clear distinction of the hedgehog concept. Every company would like to be the best at something, but few actually understand it. With piercing insights and egoless clarity, what they actually have the potential to be best at, and just as important, what they cannot be best at. It is this distinction that stands as one of the primary contrasts between the good to great companies and the comparison companies. Consider the contrast between Abbott Laboratories and Upjohn. In 1964, the two companies were almost identical in terms of revenue, profits, and product lines. Both companies had the bulk of their business in pharmaceuticals principally antibiotics. Both companies had family management. Both companies lagged behind the rest of the pharmaceutical industry. But then in 1974, Abbott had a breakthrough in performance, producing cumulative returns of 4 times the market and 5.5 times Upjohn over the next 15 years. One crucial difference between the two companies is that Abbott developed a hedgehog concept based on what it could be the best at, and Upjohn did not. Abbott began by confronting the brutal facts, and by 1964, Abbott had lost the opportunity to become the best pharmaceutical company, while Abbott had drowsingly lumbered along in 1940s and 1950s, living off its cash cow, erythromycin. Companies like Merck had built research engines that rivaled Harvard and Berkeley. By 1964, George Kane and his Abbott team realized that Merck and others had such a huge research lead that trying to be the best pharmaceutical company would be like a high school football team trying to take on the Dallas Cowboys. And even though Abbott's entire history lay in pharmaceuticals, becoming the best pharmaceutical company was no longer a viable option. So, guided by the level 5 leader and tapping into the faith side of the Stockdale paradox, there must be a way for us to prevail as a great company, and we will find it. The Abbott team sought to understand what it could be the best at. And around 1967, a key insight emerged. We've lost the chance to be the best pharmaceutical company, but we have an opportunity to excel at creating products to contribute to cost-effective healthcare. Abbott had experimented with hospital nutritional products designed to help patients quickly regain their strength after surgery, and diagnostic devices. One of the primary ways to reduce healthcare costs is through proper diagnosis. Abbott eventually became the #1 company in both of these areas, which moved it far down the path of becoming the best company in the world at creating products that make healthcare more cost effective. Upjohn never confronted the same brutal reality and continued to live with the delusion that it could beat Merck. And later, when it fell even further behind the pharmaceutical leaders, it diversified into arenas where it definitely could not be the best in the world, and such as plastics and chemicals. As Upjohn fell even further behind, it returned to a focus on ethical drugs, yet never confronted the fact that it was just too small to win in the big stakes pharmaceutical game. And despite consistently spending nearly twice the percentage of sales on R&D as Abbott, Upjohn saw its profits dwindle to less than half those of Abbott's before being acquired in 1995. The Abbott versus Upjohn case highlights the difference between a core business and a hedgehog concept. Just because something is your core business, just because you've been doing it for years and perhaps even decades, it does not necessarily mean that you can be the best in the world at it. And if you cannot be the best in the world at your core business, then your core business cannot be the basis of your hedgehog concept. Clearly, a hedgehog concept is not the same as a core competence. You can have competence as something, but not necessarily have the potential to be the best in the world at it. And to use the analogy, consider the young person who gets straight A's in high school's calculus and scores high on the math part of the SATs, demonstrated core competence at mathematics. And does that mean that the person should become a mathematician? Not necessarily. Suppose now that the young person goes off to college and enrolls in math courses and continues to earn A's, yet encounters people who are genetically encoded for math. As one such student said after this experience, it would take me 3 hours to finish the final. Then there were those who finished the same final in 30 minutes and earned an A+. Their brains are just wired differently. I could be a very competent mathematician, but I soon realized that I could never be the best. That young person might still get pressure from parents, friends to continue with math and saying, but you're so good at it. And just like our young person, many people have been pulled or have fallen into careers that they can never attain complete mastery and fulfillment at, suffering from the curse of competence, but lacking clear hedgehog concept, they rarely become great at what they do. The hedgehog concept requires a severe standard of excellence, and it's not just about building on strength and competence, but about understanding what your organization truly has the potential to be the very best at and sticking to it. Like Upjohn, the comparison company stuck to businesses at which they were good, but could never be the best, or worse, launched off in a pursuit of easy growth and profits in arenas where they had no hope of being the best. They made money, but never became great. To go from good to great requires transcending the curse of competence. It requires the discipline to say, just because we're good at it, just because we're making money and generating growth, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can become the best at it. The good to great companies understood that doing what you're good at will only make you good. Focusing solely on what you can potentially do better than any other organization is the only path to greatness. Every good to great company eventually gained deep understanding of this principle and pinned their futures on allocating resources to those few arenas where they could potentially be the best. The comparison companies rarely attained this understanding. And then here in this book, in the physical book, you actually have a table where you have Abbott Laboratory, Circuit City, Fannie Mae, Gillette, Kimberly-Clark, Kroger, Nuger, Philip Morris, Wells Fargo, Walgreens, and even Pitney Bowes. And you can see some of the notes, and you can see where they could have become the best at certain things and where they didn't become. And I'll share with you one. Okay, let's go with Walgreens. It could become the best at convenience stores. A simple concept, and here's the notes. Walgreens saw that it was not just a drugstore, but also a convenience store, and it began to systematically seek the best sites for convenience, clustering many of the stores within a small radius and pioneering drive-through pharmacies. And it also made extensive investments in technology, including the recent website developments, and then linking Walgreens stores worldwide to create one giant corner pharmacy. That's good. That's how it made its overall trajectory, right? That's awesome. That's awesome. Make sure to get the physical book, because once you have the physical book, you understand really how to just take things to the next level. Okay. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. In the next Read With Me session, we'll complete chapter 5, and we'll get more insight into the economic engines and what your denominator is for your company, so you can grow it from being good to great. I'll see you in the next video. Talk to you soon.